Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast. Ozcast. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we are heading over to India to take a closer look at a new program making waves in Delhi.
Waves is right.
It's called the Mahila Samriddhi Yojana, and it's turning heads with its promise of monthly cash payments directly to eligible women.
Definitely a bold move. And as always, with these big initiatives, it's sparking some lively debate and a bit of political maneuvering too. You know how it goes.
Always, right? So before we wade into the political waters, let's break this down for our listeners.
Yeah.
What exactly does this Mahila Samriddhi Yojana offer, and who can actually benefit from it?
Well, in a nutshell, it's a direct cash transfer program rolled out with perfect timing on International Women's Day.
Oh, wow. So it's brand new.
Very much so. The Delhi government, which, as you know, is now under BJP control, had made this a big election promise, and they're delivering on it with a monthly payout of $2,500 to eligible women.
That's about $30 USD, right?
Yeah, that's right. And that may not sound like a huge sum, but in a city like Delhi, where many families are living on tight budgets, it can be a significant help.
For sure. $30 can go a long way, depending on where you are. So who exactly qualifies for this program?
Good question. There are a few key criteria. First off, you have to be a woman living in Delhi between the ages of 18 and 60.
Makes sense.
There's also an income cap. Your family income can't be over 3 lakh per year, which works out to about $3,600 USD. And you can't be a government employee or already enrolled in other government assistance programs.
Right, so they're really targeting women who are facing real economic hardship.
Exactly. They want to make sure the money is going to those who need it most.
So they're aiming for the most impact. But is a monthly payment of $2,500 really enough to make a difference? Can it actually empower women in a meaningful way?
Well, now that's where it gets really interesting. Keep in mind, we're talking about a place where, for many families, even basic necessities can be a struggle. This extra money could mean a young girl gets to stay in school, or a family can afford essential health care without falling into debt.
Okay, I see. That perspective definitely puts things into a different light. I mean, it could be a lifeline for some families.
Absolutely. But of course, not everyone sees it that way.
Right. I bet there are some who think it's just a temporary fix, a Band-Aid solution.
Precisely. Critics argue that while it might help in the short term, it doesn't address the underlying problems that are holding women back. They say the focus should be on long-term solutions, like investing in education and job training, providing opportunities, not just handouts.
Makes sense. So it's like teaching someone to fish instead of just giving them a fish.
Right, and that's a powerful argument, but the government has its own reasons for going the direct cash transfer route.
Well, yeah, I was just going to ask, what's their rationale besides just helping people?
Well, for the BJP, this scheme is about more than just economic policy. It's a political statement. You see, they campaigned on this promise, and now they're delivering. It's a way to show their commitment to women's welfare, especially with elections coming up.
I see. So there's a lot of political strategy at play here. I imagine the opposition has a thing or two to say about that.
Oh, you bet they do. The AAP is not holding back. They're accusing the BJP of basically playing politics with people's lives, saying this scheme is all about grabbing headlines and winning votes, not about genuine long-term solutions for women.
So we've got two very different perspectives on this.
Yes.
On the one hand, we see the potential for positive change in women's lives. But on the other, there's this undeniable political game unfolding.
It's a complicated situation for sure.
So is this $2,500 a genuine step towards lasting change, or just a pawn in a political chess match we'll need to explore a bit further to find out?
Definitely a lot more to uncover here.
Yeah, it really feels like we're looking at two sides of the same coin here. On one side, right, you have the possibility of real positive change, but then there's always that political shadow hanging over everything.
It's true, and that brings us to a really crucial question about empowerment. Like, is it really empowering if it all hinges on which political party is in charge, you know?
Yeah, that's a good point. What happens if the next government comes in and decides to scrap the whole thing?
Exactly. It makes you wonder if a program like this can ever truly be effective if it's so tied to the political wins, you know?
Well, is there any way to separate the two?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it really speaks to this broader debate we're having about the role of government in social welfare programs. Some people argue that direct cash transfers like this are the most efficient way to help those in need.
So the idea is that it gives people the power to decide for themselves how to best use the money.
Yeah, exactly. It's about empowering individuals to take control of their own lives instead of dictating how the aid should be used.
So it's about trusting women to make the best choices for themselves and their families.
Exactly. And there's actually a growing body of research that supports this approach. Studies from places like Brazil and Mexico have shown that direct cash transfers can really make a difference in reducing poverty, improving health outcomes, and even increasing school enrollment.
That's great to hear. But I imagine there are also some concerns about how sustainable this model is in the long run. Can the Delhi government actually afford to keep this program going, especially if it becomes a permanent thing?
Yeah, that's where the critics bring up some valid point. They argue that the financial burden of this scheme could really strain the budget and potentially force cuts in other essential services like education or healthcare.
Right.
And then there's the issue of accountability and transparency. How can we be sure that the money is actually reaching the intended recipients and not being siphoned off through corruption or mismanagement?
That's a huge concern, and it highlights the need for systems in place to really track the program's impact and make sure everything is above board.
Yeah.
What steps has the Delhi government taken to address these concerns?
Well, they've put a lot of emphasis on using technology, specifically the Aadhaar-based eKYC system, for verifying identities and distributing the funds.
Oh, right. Aadhaar is that biometric ID system they have in India.
Exactly. It's basically like a digital fingerprint, and eKYC is the electronic know your customer process. So by linking these cash transfers to Aadhaar, they're trying to make the whole process more efficient, prevent fraud, and ensure that the money goes to the right people.
So it's about leveraging technology to kind of streamline things and minimize the risk of leakage. But even with those measures in place, how can we be sure that this program is actually making a real difference in women's lives? Like, what kind of metrics should we be looking at to measure its success?
That's where data becomes crucial. To really understand the effectiveness of the scheme, we need to look beyond just the numbers of beneficiaries and focus on long-term outcomes. Are we seeing an increase in women's income and savings? Are they able to access better healthcare and education for themselves and their families? Is there a noticeable decrease in poverty and inequality among women in Delhi? Those are the kind of indicators that will tell us if this program is truly empowering women or just providing temporary relief.
It sounds like it's a multifaceted challenge that requires careful monitoring and evaluation over time. But let's not forget about the real people at the heart of all of this. What are their stories? How are their lives actually being impacted by this program?
That's where we move from policy and statistics to the human dimension of this initiative, and that's where it gets really compelling.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in all the policy details and the political back and forth, but at the end of the day, this is about real people's lives, right? Have you come across any stories that really show us how this scheme is playing out on the ground?
Definitely. I mean, there's so many stories out there, but one that stuck with me was about a woman named Asha. She's a single mom in Delhi, works as a domestic helper, and she was really struggling to make ends meet, barely able to provide for herself and her two kids. But since she started receiving that 2,500 monthly payment from the Mahila Samriddhi Yojana, things have started to look up for her.
Well, that's wonderful. What kind of changes has she been able to make?
Well, for Asha, it's meant being able to send her daughter to a better school, one that provides a midday meal, which means the child is getting at least one nutritious meal a day, and it's given her a little bit of breathing room financially. She's actually been able to start saving a small amount each month for the first time in her life.
That's incredible. It really shows you how even what seems like a small amount of money can make a huge difference in someone's life. It sounds like this scheme is giving women like Asha a real safety net.
Yeah, it's definitely providing some stability and, more importantly, a sense of agency. A lot of women have shared how this money has allowed them to contribute more to household expenses, which in turn gives them more of a say in family decisions, things they might have been excluded from before.
So it's not just about economics. It's about shifting those power dynamics within families and communities. It's about respect.
Absolutely. It's giving these women a seat at the table. But we also have to acknowledge that there are some concerns about potential downsides. There's always another side to the coin.
That's an interesting point. What kind of negative consequences are we talking about?
Well, one concern is that in some cases, the money might end up being controlled by male members of the family, which obviously undermines the whole purpose of the program.
Yeah, that defeats the purpose.
Exactly. And there's also the worry that this kind of financial assistance might actually discourage some women from seeking employment, which could keep them stuck in a cycle of dependence in the long run.
That's a really important point. It seems like making this program work requires a very careful balance. How do we ensure that it's truly empowering women without creating these unintended negative consequences.
It's a complex issue for sure, and it demands a multi-pronged approach. We need robust monitoring and evaluation to keep track of the program's impact and identify any potential problems early on. And just as important, we need strong public awareness campaigns to educate both men and women about the goals of the scheme and to really emphasize why financial independence is so crucial for women.
So it's not just about giving money, it's about changing mindsets and creating an environment where women can truly thrive.
Exactly, you hit the nail on the head. True empowerment goes beyond just financial aid. It's about fostering a society where women have equal opportunities, access to education, and the freedom to make their own choices. The Mahila Samriddhi Yojana, with all its complexities and potential pitfalls, has definitely started an important conversation about these issues, and it's a conversation that we need to keep having.
As we've dug into all the details of this scheme, I've realized that it's really a reflection of the bigger fight for gender equality, not just in India, but everywhere.
I couldn't agree more. It reminds us that real progress requires us to look at the whole picture. We need to address the economic barriers, but also the social and cultural ones that hold women back, and that takes a collective effort from everyone. Policymakers, communities, individuals, we all have a role to play.
Well said. This has been a fascinating deep dive, and I really hope our listeners are leaving with a better understanding of this program. The Mahila Samriddhi Yojana, all its different aspects, and the potential it has to impact people's lives.
And maybe even more importantly, I hope it sparks some curiosity, encouraging people to learn more about these issues and to engage in those tough conversations about how we can create a more just and equitable world for everyone.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.
Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.